Hey everybody, and welcome back to a new season of Criterion Watch. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody. I'm here with...
Yo, this be the moo cow. Happy moo year.
What's your actual name, though?
Presenza.
Your regular name. Yeah. Well, we're here to discuss a film that I picked out for because, are we going to release this January or March? We should have probably figured that out. Let's release it in January.
It's one of those months that's after
It's
December.
going to be January. So we're going to release this in January, which is kind of perfect because it's winter, right?
And it's 2024.
It's 2024. So guess what that means? We're going to have a winter-themed movie that I picked out that I don't believe you've seen.
Okay.
You have talked... I've mentioned it to you before, and I think you said you never saw it. I don't know. So I'm going to bring it up, and you can tell me if you had. But the film is a film produced by Griffin Dunn and a couple other people, and it is Chilly Scenes of Winter.
Ah, that's right. We've talked about this, heard about it, never saw it.
Never saw it. So This is a Joe Micklin Silver movie.
I am a big Griffin Dunn fan.
And produced by Griffin Dunn, and I think he has a little bit of a cameo and some other people. We'll get into more of the actual details of who was in it, who worked on it, and everything. But I picked this movie because, well, I think Paul had never seen it, and when I first bought it, I had no idea. Criterion just put this out recently.
Seriously, I had no idea that Griffin Dunn had a Criterion level movie. That's great. Good for him.
He's actually got a couple. He also After Hours is also.
Well, he's in it.
He produced it too.
He produced it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's produced by the same team that produced this film. This was their first film. Then I think I think it was their first film. Anyway, we'll get more into it later. But we'll be right back.
And of course,
after we check it out.
American Werewolf in London, of course.
I don't think he produced that.
No, but he was in it. He was just wonderful in it.
Yeah, that was. I think he had. Well, we'll get into that. I think there's a little bit more backstory with that. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll be back. So, tune in a few.
Oh, yeah.
And we are back. So, to talk about Chilly Scenes of Winter. So once again, you definitely said you've never seen this movie, right?
Right, and yeah, I guess so, because when it was released, it turns out it was under another title, Head Over Heels.
I don't see that movie either.
No, I don't recall it coming out.
It's called Head Over Heels originally.
I like Chilly Scenes of Winter better.
Yeah, I think so. And it fits the movie because, so we watched a little bit of the producers' featurette that's on this Triple Play, and they talked about how basically it all came to be, which is very interesting, and I was interested in. I think that's if you're an independent filmmaker or anything like that, I would definitely check that out.
If you're fans of Griffin Dunn like we are, and Mark Metcalf
and Amy Robinson, and
really
they all produced this film. But they talked about how basically it all began, and then how later it got marketed poorly, and it was called Head Over Heels, and it was because apparently winter and chilly are titles that don't market very well or something. They decided
to market it as a zany comedy, and
that's
not what that is.
It is not a zany comedy. I love it. I love it really. I love it for how it is. It's it's more subtle, and somebody called a quiet comedy, and it really is.
It's adult, It's not. It's not a bunch of teenagers doing stupid shit. It's more like adults doing stupid shit. But
it's adults doing. That's a good way to describe it, because it was so funny. Because you were saying when we were watching it, you were like, John Hurd's character seems younger. Like his character should have been younger.
Yeah,
a little bit. Younger people deal with this shit. Older people should know better by now, and I kind of agree. I think he is like that, but
it's a great performance by John Hurd, though. If you're a John Hurd fan, you got to watch this movie.
Oh, you got
He is the lead, and he's in just about every scene.
So we're watching the movie. He hasn't seen it yet, and the credits start rolling, which are really great credit thing. Just really easy going,
clean,
just
and simple.
Clean, yes, clean, simple. They don't really they don't do credit sequences anymore anyway because they think that it slows down the movie or whatever. But that's the point, right? Like this movie's the kind of movie is supposed to slow down, or whatever, and everything. This isn't a ADHD movie, or whatever. So I don't know if Generation Z would like this or not, but I would definitely say go watch it. Anyway, we start doing the credits, and Paul sees all the cast, and every single cast. He goes, John Hurd! Oh my God! And then he goes, then he sees Mary Beth Hurt, and he's like, Mary Beth Hurt! Oh my God! And then he's like, Peter Riegert! Because he loves local
Pete
hero.
Riegert, yeah. Everybody in there, just
fantastic.
Jerry Hardin's in there, and
Kenneth McMillan.
Kenneth McMillan is in there.
Gloria
Graham.
We had seen what is it? In a Lonely Place. When I was out in LA. You can watch that video. We did that for a Criterion watch, and she was so great in that. And they even mentioned that was one of the movies they loved of her and wanted
one of the better Humphrey Bogart movies.
Wanted to work with her. She was in the Big Sleep and a bunch of other movies too. Oklahoma, which you're not a fan of musicals, so I don't think you'd watch it.
I never watched it.
But yeah, she's just so beautiful, and she was so beautiful in this movie. I mean,
she looked great.
Everybody was so great. The guy who played the blind man, I don't remember his name, but he did a great job. Everybody just stood out, and just were
and
fantastic.
They're all adults. It's great. Not a single teenager in sight. It was wonderful.
That was your favorite part.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't that kind of movie. It was an adult movie. But we talked about this during the while we watched it, was how we had reviewed Comfort and Joy in November, and Comfort and Joy is basically
has a lot of similarities. The obsession over the woman and just pining over them, and you can't get past it, and you have to go through this this just heart-wrenching phase before you can finally move on, and it's so both movies have that.
In Comfort and Joy, it moves on a little quick, and the guy moves on very, very slow, so it's like a little bit different in that.
A little different.
But yeah, it's a similar kind of thing. It's very dialogue driven. There's not action packed. It's a lot about relationships and dealing with people.
But the good thing is that even though it's very dialogue heavy, there's a lot of really good dialogue, a lot of naturalistic dialogue, and the dialogue informs you both of what's going on, and also it informs you about the characters, and it also, there's that one scene where it pretty much the whole movie is in a nutshell in that one bit of dialogue between them, and it's just really, really well written.
Why would you want to be with a man who doesn't love you that much, as opposed to a man who
loves you too much?
And she said, because I don't want to be less of a fraud, or I want to be less of a fraud.
Don't want to feel like a fraud.
Yeah. And
that's her whole problem.
And
that's his whole problem.
And it's a similar thing that you see a lot of times in movies where there's a triangle. There's the three people, or whatever. There's the guy that loves the girl, but she's with the other guy, and
that's typical.
It's typical. But this is done so well that it just feels natural and normal. It doesn't feel like something that's actually typical.
And it's a fun little subplot or sub thing going on there too, because there's also the relationship with him and Sam. Which is nice. It's understated, but it's there, and they have this fun, interesting little relationship thingy where it's just unspoken, and yet it's very palpable, and it's very solid, and it's great. It informs the film and the narrative and their characters, and it's really, really well done.
Sam is his best friend, and you were like, when you saw Peter Riegert, as you got so excited about seeing him,
he's
but
great.
Also he's got crazy hair, which we think might have been a wig. We're not sure.
Is that John Cooper Clarke?
Okay. It's crazy hair, but we loved it. It was perfect. For his character, absolutely.
You never see him with that kind of hair again.
No, I don't think you ever will. But he was great. And then And we were wondering, like, what? I don't think we even looked up what's going on with him now. If he's been doing a lot of stuff.
I
or
hope
not.
so. He's so great.
Yeah, you'd want to work with him. That's somebody on your list. Because Local Hero is your favorite movie of all time.
Him
he's the star.
And Griffin Dunn.
And
love to work with the two of them.
Sadly, we can't work with John Hurd, which is a bummer because I love him. And
yeah, he was great.
I was telling Paul that I think one of his last movies was Sharknado, so it's kind of bad one to end on. I wish he had ended on something where he could have been like the lead and could have had a really good role left, but people don't make movies like this anymore or anything this nice and quiet and
character driven. It's
understated.
You don't get a whole lot of character studies. There's no big splashy special effects to drive the interest for films, which is a shame.
Because back then, and you've talked about this on numerous podcasts and vidcasts, but back then in the 70s, this was made in 79, so this is almost 80s, but this is a 79, movie, and in the 70s, it was all adults. Yeah. Everything you've ever shown me in the 70s was adults. Like there was, Prince of the City, or that's 80s, right?
That's 80, 81, 80, something like
but
that.
It was set in the 70s, but still, like, movies that are like made in the 70s, a lot of that was
mainly because even when I was a kid, I was watching adult movies. I had no interest in kid movies. Most kid movies are crap.
Except for Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, that's more of a teen movie.
But that's a kid movie. Like a teen movie is a kid movie. So
that's one of the few ones that are decent.
Yeah,
but for the most part, Hollywood doesn't really know how to do kid movies.
Now there was a kid in this movie, but she didn't even talk.
Yeah, and she didn't, she wasn't really that important other than it was
someone important
to Laura.
For Laura, yeah. So let's actually go into the story for people, especially if you haven't seen the movie and now you're just hearing all this shit and you're just like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So Charles is, we kind of meet Charles, be like kind of flashbacky stuff, like a bunch of stuff where we meet him, but then there's flashbacks, then they go back and forth, so... which you were saying you like that style where it's not. It almost felt like a novel,
right?
Which is based on a novel, and so it felt like a novel. Where, and Tarantino has talked about that. That's like a lot of his style is, like a novel.
Well, and it sinks you so that you understand that John Hurd's character is going to be the central character for this film. Everything is going to be experienced through his eyes and through the way he processes everything.
So we learn how he meets Laura, which is she works down in, I guess, I don't know what exactly he does.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
He does a job.
He has a job. He has an office. He gets told that one of the co-workers is out sick. So he has to go do the thing that the coworker does.
It's like the TPS reports
in Office Space.
Office Space, yeah.
So he goes down and meets Laura, and he goes and she, gives him the paper or whatever.
She's flippin' adorable.
Does all the work, and she asks where the lady is. He says she's out sick, so he's filling in for her. They have a little back and forth.
He's macking on her almost
instantly. He's already fallen in love.
We've all been there.
That might have been the red flag to begin with. But anyway, he falls in love with her. He kind of, but he finds out she's married, and
he's a little pushy with her.
Yeah, very pushy with her,
especially when you just met them.
He says, "I'd like us to go out sometime," and then she's like,
"I just met you.
Why would we go out?" And he's like, "'Cause I like you," and she's like, "I'm married," and he goes, "I don't believe you," and I was like, I have never heard anybody do that. Like that, just like when I first I saw this in July when I bought it, from the Criterion sale, and I took a chance at this, but mainly because I saw it was produced by Griffin Dunn, and I was like, I'll buy anything that he has anything to do with, and so I ended up buying After Hours that same time.
Great movie.
So I didn't even realize at first that they both did that until later. So it was kind of neat buying both of those, both of the two ones, and I hope there's a few more from them, and I hope that Criterion gets a few of the other ones that, like Baby It's You was a John Sayles movie.
And I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, and you're a John Sayles fan, so and we've done a few John Sayles films on this an indie film cafe. But anyway, so so we got. I was like shocked when I heard him say, like. Talking to her and her saying, he's saying, I don't believe you when he said that, because I was like,
that's the old-fashioned way of getting rid of somebody you don't want.
Right.
Just
but I've
tell
never
them
heard
that you're
anybody
married.
actually just call him out on it, which she wasn't lying.
Right.
She was married. She shows off the ring. And then he says, well, I want us to disregard it. And she says, okay.
See, because it's funny because, that's the way you got rid of somebody, because in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, cheating on your spouse was still considered socially not a good thing.
Right.
But, nowadays, we're living at 50% or higher divorce rates. That's not really going to do it anymore. So what? Now, the thing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s was you would say, oh, I'm gay.
Right.
And that would be the way we'll get rid of him. And now it's different. It's a different world with Me Too. It's more like, just fuck off and leave me alone.
Right. Right. Nowadays, they just say, because a lot of this stuff would not fly in today's culture and everything. Yeah. So it.
And I'm not saying that it's necessarily good or bad. It's just interesting to me how things different. Have evolved over time.
Yeah, it's different. But yeah, in the 70s, you would say you're married or whatever, just to get away from somebody, even if you weren't, And then, so he says that, and she says, okay. So she agrees to basically cheat on her husband with this guy. And so, like I was telling Paul, my dad would hate this movie. He hates movies about cheaters because of the same reason of, it's dumb. Don't do it. Like, this is going to end badly.
Well, even more, I mean, the thing about her character flaw is that she doesn't really know herself.
Right.
And she doesn't understand why she feels like she needs to get away from a guy whom she's described as perfectly nice. Has a perfectly nice relationship with a perfectly nice daughter, and everything's really nice. It's just not working for her, and she doesn't understand why. And he doesn't understand that she will never be able to get past that until she figures that out, which is why the ultimatum was the wrong move to do. He may have gotten her later on, but he wasn't willing to wait.
He should have stuck with his original plan, because at one point the friend said, you should just go over there and ask her if it's you or him, right? And he says, I don't want no for an answer. Right. And he should have kept that going, because it knew. Sounded like
he knew.
He knew it was over. Yeah.
He knew the answer was gonna be no.
No.
He didn't want to
at
hear
all
it.
Time. He just wanted to prolong it, I guess. Prolong his heartache.
Right. Well, he knew it was gonna be no, because I think inside he knew that she doesn't know yet. Yeah. Until she knows, she can't make that leap. She can't do it. That's the thing, and he's unwilling to wait. And it's part of it is timing too, because you meet this person earlier, you don't have to worry about this. You meet this person later when they've already figured it out.
They talked about that.
Right. It's good. But it's just the timing. Meeting them at that time, it's just not going to work.
Why couldn't I have met you, before you met this guy? And she said, I wish you did. Yep. And I'm like, well, why couldn't you? You just did it. I mean, it just wasn't the right time. I brought up 500 Days of Summer, which I hope to do on Film Freaks at some point. If not this season, another season. And that's because in 500 Days of Summer, it's a very similar story of a guy who's just so obsessed with a girl, but she just isn't in the right space to be
not
with that
8
guy.
days a week obsessed, but
no,
close.
It was not. Yeah, he's not standing outside her. Well, this guy does go to her house when she's not around. He does
he
drop
visits
her off
the chalet and is hanging outside and follows her.
He follows her. He makes a whole a fake house.
Makes a diorama
of her house. He
gets obsessive. Compulsive.
It's a little 8 days a week.
Yeah.
If you ever see the movie 8 days a week,
but he doesn't cross the line. He comes close, but he doesn't actually cross the line.
Yeah, but neither did the kid in 8 Days a Week. He just stood there. It was just dumb. It was the dumbest thing in the world. Yeah, it's a teenager version of this.
But at least in this film, John Hurt's character has the excuse that his mom's crazy. So odds are the crazy gene passed on to him, and this is how it's
didn't pass on to his sister.
No,
his sister
she was
actually
nice.
seemed really sweet.
Yeah, she was the
I don't
stable
know
one.
who the actress was, but she did a great job.
Hannah Toffer or something like that. I forget.
She was fantastic, and she was dating Griffin Dunn, who played of course
got the smoocher.
Yeah,
that was
got
nice.
The smoocher.
Good to be the producer.
That's why he's producing.
That's
you
why
know?
I want to be a producer. Huh?
And he gets this like and he has a great scene in the movie, and it's like one scene, which and apparently it led him to doing more acting, so that's great. But he had this one scene where he's just like, the guy's offering him all these things, like, do you want would you like to drink? Oh, I don't drink. Would you like milk? Yeah, too much calcium already, in my body.
It's funny because it's just a little bitty part, but you already see the kind of quirkiness that he brings to all of his characters. Like, if you loved his character, or the way he acted in American Werewolf in London, which was always my favorite of his, he stole that movie from everyone, in my opinion.
I know. I think he did a better job than David Naughton, which I love David Naughton, but I think he did.
He absolutely stole that film.
He stole it away from him because he had so much fun with that character. And I think it was something like this where he was an actor, but he hadn't really acted in anything, and then he got the chance when he produced this, and it just kind of helped blow his acting career up. And then later on he produced After Hours, where he became the lead. So because by that time he was a lead, and kind of sucks because Amy Robinson, who produced this film, was in Mean Streets, and she was the main girl in Mean Streets. Beautiful. She's still beautiful. I saw her in that picture.
I always wondered what happened to her after Mean Streets, because I was always like, I don't remember her doing very much after that.
Yeah,
but she became a producer.
Yeah. And she started producing big things like Running on Empty with Griffin and After Hours, BBSU, all this stuff. So they both were just there, just busting their ass off doing stuff, and I'm and it was something that they said where I forgot which person it was, which actor or director. It might have been the director, Joe Micklin Silver, but there was somebody said that they were basically, they learned how to deal with being an actor, with their time spent of not doing stuff. You constantly still are doing stuff. You use your time wisely when you're not working, because then working on your craft or working on another project, something. Workshopping something, because that's what you have to do. And that's what they definitely had to do in the 70s. Nowadays, you can take online classes. You can do almost anything.
I love the idea that there was this bar up on, West 74th Street, where they would all hang out. Not just them, but a whole bunch of actors.
Sean Penn.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine just hanging out with all these great up and coming actors? And
because back then they didn't even know they were up and coming.
Yeah, they didn't know.
They didn't know. So you could probably do that in LA and you wouldn't know. You'd be hanging out with all these people, and these people just have no idea. Well, maybe. See, the problem now is the internet. Everybody knows who everybody is. Plus, TikTok and Instagram, social media. It's just all about clout and followers and all this stuff. Back then,
it's good in a way in that if you suddenly burst onto the scene, I'm thinking Maydroid Girl.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, people know who she is, and are like, "Wow, she's already in a bunch of movies," and it's and that's great, and we think that's great for her. But you really had to pay dues back then in the 70s and 80s before the internet.
You had to work your way up, and nowadays
it's much slower.
And nowadays it's easier. I mean, I'll take an example as Rachel Zegler, who's actress. She's going to be in the new Snow White and all that stuff. Her first I believe and only film. I mean, not only, but her first film work was West Side Story. She got the lead in West Side Story. She hadn't worked her way up. She hadn't paid any dues.
Well, and
she just was lucky to be in that.
That's the other thing too. Is I think more these days you're chosen by looks more than experience and talent,
or how many followers you have and stuff like that. And it's such a different thing of John Hurd had worked with Joe Micklin Silver in the movie prior to this and stuff. Then and I think you said you had seen that one or something or whatever. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had seen that one, and then but you hadn't seen Hester Street.
No.
And so there was.
I remember it came on HBO. I just never
watched it.
Watched it.
Wasn't something you were interested in? Freaking Carol Kane is amazing.
I know. I love Carol Kane.
I want to see it.
I don't know. I think maybe at that time I just wasn't interested in period pieces.
Yeah, I'd be interested in checking that out. But and maybe that'll be another Criterion film. I don't know.
And it was funny because we were casting. I was like, if I wasn't Mary Beth, who was I gonna? Carol Kane was one, and then Roseanne Arquette was the other one. I was gonna say what.
I was thinking P.J. Souls. She looked a lot like her too. Like they had a little. But then you said Roseanne Arquette, and then I saw Mary Beth Hurt, and I was like, oh man, she does have a very Roseanne Arquette feel to her. So I mean,
Roseanne Arquette has that little quirkiness about her too.
She loves doing quirky roles. Quirkier roles. So I love those those characters.
I used to be so in love with Roseanne Arquette.
She's still great.
I know.
You were obsessed with Roseanne Arquette. I was obsessed with Patricia Arquette. Oh man, ugh. Both Arquettes are just wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And David Arquette. All the Alexis Arquette, all of them. Rest in peace, Alexis. And so it was just this movie just was something where you watch the film and you just get involved in their life. Like you're there. Like you can't. I hate to say it, but this is like one of those movies where it's short, and I felt like it could have been longer, and I would have been okay with it being longer.
I was happy with the length. I think it was just long enough. I think it was good. Yeah.
My favorite scene, and I told you before it happened, was when they go over to Ox's house, which is played by Mark Metcalf. He was the master in Buffy, and everything. Which, but he's tall. Like he said like what 6'3" or something. But
it was probably more than that. I think.
Felt like he was more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he
Big
was
dude.
very, very tall, and he pushed that car like whatever. But so they go over. Both Charles and Sam go over there because they want to see. Well, he wants to see the guy.
Being snoopy.
Speak to him and
snooping,
and so they go to his. I guess he sells houses like that or something.
He's pretending that they're interested in buying a chalet.
Well, it's interesting. They just kind of walk in, don't they? Like they don't knock or anything, right? They just kind of walk in.
He turns on the electric stove and leaves it on.
Whatever happened with that, guys? I'm worried. Like there's never any talk.
Someone left the stove on.
Oh no. Because they kind of walk by. I never noticed it when I first watched it. Paul notices it, and I was like, shit, what the hell just happened?
The cross I have to bear in life is I notice little details in films
and
all the time.
This movie had little details.
Whether I want to or not, I can't help it.
This movie had little details in it, and which was great. You love that. You love it when they actually take the time to do stuff that really, even if it paid no, like it didn't do anything for the rest of the film. Like we never find out what happened. We never, this never talked about again. But it was, but you saw it.
Right, and you can't help but feel anxious about it. So it adds to the scene because, the anxiety of those guys going there when they shouldn't be snooping around like that amps it up even more. And that's not even
the guy's house, but he's selling it, I guess. And so
it's the model.
Then he invites them to his house, to show that off. And I guess he automatically thinks they're gay because just the way they're talking and hanging out. They're best friends, but they're just, so he assumes they're gay. And then so the greatest shot in the whole thing is we're up on the top level, and we see Laura walk out, and she looks down and sees all of them coming in, and she sees Charles, and she automatically turns her around like, whoa, she's no, pissed. He shouldn't be here. And so they have this little scene where they're all talking, and he already told Laura that they're gay, they're a gay couple or whatever, so she's just kind of going with it. And the greatest scene is just with them all together, and first of all, Charles starts talking about eyeballs and like this thing he read in the paper about somebody taking their eyeballs out, and fixing somebody's tumor or something like that, and
weird.
And it's just got kind of gross and weird, and like something you wouldn't like where is this going kind of thing. And then there's silence for a little bit, and he says he loves Laura. Apparently that was not in the book, so if you're looking for that in the book, that scene was not written for the book, and they were afraid that the author would hate it because it's not in the book, and she loved it.
The scene I really liked is when after the typist, poor
Betty.
poor Betty, who has a crush on Charles, and he's not really interested. In fact, he comes out and says he's just not really interested. Doesn't have anything for her. But she's really sweet and nice, and
when he says that, she's thinking something else.
She's thinking something else.
She's thinking he doesn't have anything for her as far as like.
But she's still trying, and you feel bad for her. But then later on, after he's gotten Sam to drive her home, then another scene a few times, I guess days later, they're both out, and he's on the phone talking to Charles.
It was the same day, I think. Because
are you sure? I think it was later.
I thought it was the same day because he got her address from the from Betty that night, and he told the friend Sam to drop her off because he had picked her up.
Instead, they're going to the movies.
Yeah, they said they decided to go to the movie because they liked each other.
Yeah, that they've gotten together, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
I felt bad for Betty, and so yeah, it was
we also
nice.
learned earlier that Sam was sort of a player, was able because he had hooked up with one of Charles's sister's friends and stuff, and in
his bed,
in Sam's bed. So Sam was not happy about that, but he he wasn't not happy. He just kind of accepted it.
We had to go sleep on the couch.
Yeah, had to go sleep and smoke on the couch.
Bros
you hated
being
all that
bros.
stuff. You hated all that stuff, all the smoking and
yeah, that was gross.
Like in the house and in his bed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, he's smoking in bed. Oh,
Like the last place.
There's another scene that was very much like 500 Days of Summer is the scene where he's telling her that he should have a seat right, a furniture,
because she's left her husband. And she has no furniture.
So he's like, I'll just put my stuff on this chair. And there's nothing there. And she's like, I'm going to put it on my sofa here. And, right? And they were making that joke. And there was a scene in 500 Days of Summer where they were going around, what is it? IKEA or one of those places. And they were looking at all these different, furniture, and they're like, but they're pretending like it's their house. Oh, I'm going to sit right here, and I'm going to do this right here. And I was like thinking, oh man, I don't know. I don't think that the writers of this of 500 Days of Summer had seen Chilly Scenes of Winter,
Probably
but they
not.
might not. They might have,
Yeah.
but I doubt it. I think they just wrote some other scene.
It's a good scene because it really demonstrates the pain that this relationship causes, because they really are fun together. They really do connect.
There's chemistry.
It's just the timing isn't right,
There's
there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, they really like each other, but timing's not right, and she's just not in the place where she can be where she needs to be, and
right. He's ready to marry her, and she's like, I can't.
And this is a movie that's not going to get a sequel, kind of thing.
No.
It's not supposed to, because even though you sort of wonder, whatever happened to Charles after that? Is he going to be okay? Is he going to find somebody?
I think that's the end. I think that last bit where he's running is the last bit that he's getting out of his system.
Yeah. And there you go. That's kind of a perfect ending to that, I think.
Because that's the ending that they originally wanted.
Yeah, which
so
is
I don't
the
know
one we
what
saw.
I don't know what the one was that came out.
I think it's on here. We should have looked at it. But
I don't know. I'm happy seeing it the way it is.
I know, because I'm almost afraid. I'll be I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it wasn't. But that ending was perfect. I mean, I think he got the answer he wanted, and he
even worked it out a little bit. He goes back and forth to the blind candy guy several times, and every time he does, it's like a little bit more he's working out, and a little bit more he's working out, and then finally he explodes, and he's like, how am I doing? I got this, and I got this, and I got this problem, this problem, this problem, and he like lines them all up, and he's finally getting it out. But then he changes after that, and then he's, be able to address the guy nicely. And
well, the guy looks at him and goes, that's because you've been up too late. Right? Everything looks bad when you're up too late. And I was like, that might be something. Like, that might actually be a good piece of advice is just, get some more sleep, man.
Relax.
So anyway, and so when the blind man says that, because most of the time the blind man would keep going, what do you want? What do you want? Right? And what do you got? And whatever. And then so this one time he's like, why do I always have to ask it twice, man? Right? And then the third, well, the time before the last time is when he blows up. And then the last time he says it before the guy even asks him the first question. Yeah, so it shows
fun. It's the
irony.
Shows
the change.
The irony of the blind guy who's more perceptive.
Yeah. And so I was just asking him, why would a blind person sell stuff? Because you can't tell if somebody really is giving you a 5 or a 1, or is even, you got to be very trustworthy of a person if you're going to be a blind, but whatever. I guess it doesn't matter. The other stuff I loved the Gloria Graham as the mom. Mm-hmm. We get to meet her a lot because in the beginning he gets a phone call and we think it's from Laura, but it's from the mom saying she's trying to kill herself in her tub, I guess, by taking a bunch of laxatives.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that, but I did love the scene, which it turns out was improv, where she smooches Pete Riegert like an extra extended long smooch, and then he kind of reacts, and that wasn't scripted at all. That was Gloria Graham doing it herself, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to kiss this hot young actor guy.
Well,
See, so it's not just Griffin Dunn getting the opportunity.
I know, but Peter Riegert got like a lot of great, like he got you have a little bit of a sex scene with that girl or whatever. You don't really see anything, but then
except his massive wig.
Yeah, and then then you kind of like there's couple great things with Peter with girls, but he's, Peter was such an interesting character, because he was like this guy who was his best friend, but he would sort of always come over to the house and stay, or he would and he had no job.
He was a jacket salesman.
At one point he had a job, and then later he lost the job, I guess. So
he's like lighting matches and throwing it into the lamp.
Why? I didn't understand any of that stuff. And then the girl had to go, or he had to go and take the water.
And just bored with life.
I know. I don't know. Maybe that was it. I have no idea. And I couldn't tell, like, in the beginning, like, if Betty and him even liked each other.
And it's funny, like, he's like, okay, I'm leaving you $20. I want you to go to the store, buy the food, make dinner. You're not doing anything. This is what you can do to help. And instead, he comes back and he's got all this wine. It's like, you blew all that money on the wine? He's like, not all of it. And he hands him, like,
couple
12 cents.
Yeah. But it was so funny because you were like looking at that wine going, oh my God, yes. Right? There was a lot of, it was cheap wine back then. It was like $3 a bottle or something.
Right. Cabernet Sauvignon.
For like some serious wine. So.
But they had that relationship that, if it wasn't surprised by it, at least he understood it. And it wasn't like he exploded or blew up or got super angry. It's just like, well, that's Sam.
Then he just goes to the store with Betty,
right.
Instead. Like he doesn't, and that's where she has the conversation with him. Oh, it's nice that you live with your roommate. Well, it's a roommate that doesn't pay rent. Mm-hmm. I just kind of let him stay there. And she was like, oh, that's even nicer of you. And like she's always trying to find the bright side of things and the nice side, and he's just like. Just so obsessed with Laura that he just doesn't care.
She actually looked a little bit like Carol Kane.
A little bit.
I could see Carol Kane in that role.
Except
it's a smaller role.
She probably would.
She needed a bigger role.
Maybe she did a smaller role in Princess Bride. Remember?
Yeah.
I mean that was a little later, but like still, she might have done it. I don't know. Man, I would have. They said the casting of this movie was in a hotel room. and it was like Joe Micklin Silver's hotel room, and people were coming there. And some really Jamie Lee Curtis came up for the role.
Wow.
Like
I'd love to have seen a read for that.
I mean, I would have just loved to just been there.
Ann Archer,
like some of the greatest actors that lived, and they picked Mary Beth Hurt, and she was just wonderful.
And Bill Murray was originally supposed to play Charles, and he was just like meh.
And Jeff Goldblum was up for it.
Jeff Goldblum.
And then they decided on Peter Riegert because John Hurd knew him, and they were all fans of him. So they decided to do him, to have him in the film. And I just thought, oh man, this is just fantastic. You know, I mean, all the people in it. You love the stepfather because stepfather, Peter McMillan's character, Pete. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
usually the stepfather is, a jerk in most movies.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's the nice guy. He's a real nice guy in this. And then, Pete, you always see McMillan as kind of a heavy or kind of a jerk sometimes. I think famously he was in, Dune. He was he was the head of the Harkonnens.
David Lynch's Dune.
Yeah. And he was the sheriff in Salem's Lot, and he was in a bunch of movies back then. Yeah.
Man, you check these things out. He was George McMillan, I think was his name. George McMillan.
George McMillan.
And he was so great. Oh man, he was fantastic.
He's a real nice guy.
Yeah, and that was his thing. His character was really nice, and he didn't understand why Charles just didn't, and a lot of that was with his character. His character just was going through this feeling of like, I don't care about anything right now except how am I going to get Laura, and all these other things are just meaningless stuff that I have to deal with in order to figure out how to get Laura.
And then in the end, he ends up buying him a couple cans of turtle wax because he was talking about the turtle wax earlier. So it was a nice little gesture.
Yeah, it was so cute. There's a lot of cuteness to it. And I liked all of it. I liked the stuff with
and he's a complicated character because parts of him are creepy as fuck and parts of him are like too obsessive and too nuts, but there are other parts where he's just really nice and very identifiable, and he's just going through this phase and he has to get through it, and that's it.
The creepy as fuck stuff was like he would say random shit.
I'm gonna rape you.
I'm gonna rape you, which I don't even know if we can say that on YouTube. But he, says that, and it's just so gross and weird.
But it's not because he's going to. He's
not going to.
But it's just a reflection of how obsessed he is.
And I was just like, why would you say that? Like randomly, Like, that was just so weird. But, and then, and there was another one, too. It's like, I'm gonna beat you, I'm gonna beat, him, and then I'm gonna come over and beat you. And I was like, what? Why is he saying this stuff? And why? And she even says, I'm scared of you. And I'm like, get away from this guy. Like, I love him, but, like, get away from him. He's weird. Like, this is just getting... And a lot of these things would normally make you, like, not like the character. But John Hurd does it so well where you're just confused about the character. You know why he's doing these things.
You get the feeling that, he's a semi-crazy person who's in a semi-crazy situation. And even when he says these things, deep down you can tell he doesn't really mean it. It's just his inappropriate way of expressing his situation.
Inappropriate.
Yeah, very inappropriate.
But I
wouldn't be able to get away with it. These days there's no sympathy.
You can't say shit like that.
No sympathy behind any of that.
Like I said, like I don't even think you can usually say that shit out loud, like at all.
It's a more complicated situation here because it's a more complicated
you shouldn't say
adult
that shit.
movie.
Yeah. So anyway, but it's a complicated adult movie, and it's about.
And they were talking about United Artists liked their flawed, characters in the movies because they're more interesting and they're more believable. There's more depth to them, and he was a very flawed character with a lot of different stuff going on. That
was another thing. Like United Artists, originally they went to like 20th Century Fox or something. I think it was Fox, and then the girl who worked for them left and went to United Artists and brought the script to them, and they said they loved it and pretty much just let Joe Micklin Silver do whatever she wanted, and everything, left him alone. Then later they were going to interfere, but Heaven's Gate became a big problem, so they had to go concentrate on that. And while that was a big thing, they said just make sure it's on budget. You know, and I thought, wow, man, you can't get that today.
They got the rights from the writer for $2,000. That was amazing.
It's the same. What for that? Yeah. All they had to do is, and they asked, and she was very happy with it. You know,
it's great. You'd never get that today.
No, definitely way more than that to buy the rights to a book. But this is such a small book. I don't think many people have talked about this book. I've never heard of it. I didn't even know it was a book until I saw the movie, and it said based on the book by, you know, and everything. Is Ann Beatty?
Yeah.
She was.
I wrote for back when the newspapers were a big deal. The New York Times is a big deal. It's not the case anymore. The newspapers have lost all their power because
they're all internet now. Everything's internet. And there is still internet, like there is still like NewYorkTimes.com, but you know, whatever.
It's not what it was.
Not what it once was. I mean, almost feels like anybody can write, you know, for those companies these days.
Well, they don't bother with writers anymore. It's just
like journalists, you know. But yeah, so she was a journalist. Is that okay? I didn't catch that, but wonderful.
Journalist and writer.
And there you go. So. There's, you know, and then she wrote a book, and she got really excited.
And what else has this director done? That's what I was curious about, because
Hester Street.
Hester Street, and what else?
God, what was the other one? There's another one she did. The one that John Hurt was in.
The seventh something or other.
Yeah, you said you've seen it or something.
Okay, I didn't realize that she had directed.
Yeah.
That.
So there you go. I mean, it was wonderful. But
that was years ago, man. That was early, back when we first got HBO in the late 70s. And they were showing movies like that.
Unfortunately, Joe Micklin Silver is no longer with us today, and John Hurd's no longer. So there's a few people, and this is just like, if you look at it, you see all like I'll tell you guys the special features, because there's some really good stuff on here. It's a new restored 4K digital transfer with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. New program featuring producers Griffin Dunn, Mark Metcalf, and Amy Robinson. That's what we watched. A documentary from 1983 by Katja Reginelli about director Joe Micklin Silver. Excerpts from a 2005 Directors Guild of America interview with Micklin Silver. The original ending of the film cut by Micklin Silver for its re-release in 1982, and English subtitles for the deaf and hearing and stuff, which I always get happy when there's subtitles, but we didn't put them on. It was a good thing we didn't need them, you know, on there or whatever. It was that we could understand everything everybody was saying.
Yeah, the sound and the visuals are all very crisp and clear.
Yeah.
Great transfer.
They said that they had the director of photography, was it? That like knew how to do the snow and things like that, and I think that's Bobby Byrne is the director of photography, and it was done by Triple Play, and they started Triple Play. That was their first, and this was the only one they did, I believe, as Triple Play, and then Mark left to go be an actor and do his acting stuff, and Griffin and Amy continued producing. And as I said, they did like After Hours and Running on Empty and Baby It's You and a couple other movies. And I just want to see more stuff by them, you know.
Kind of wish they would do more.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do another movie or not. I don't know if they're still working together, but I know they're still friends, and they came back and did the producers thing on here, so they talked about it.
Haven't seen Griffin Dunn do anything in quite a while.
Yeah, I think he's just been busy, you know, with life, you know, living
Everyone's
his
getting
life.
older, you know.
You know, and wonderful. But yeah, this movie was fantastic. All the actors did a fantastic job. The directing.
Glad Criterion picked this up. That's great.
There was nothing wrong with it. And as you said, you notice all these other things, and you notice nothing wrong. There might have been one continuity error you thought, which was that he had the chocolate bar.
Not so much a continuity issue. It just bugged me.
Well, no, but you said like all of a sudden it was gone in the next shot.
Well, yeah.
And
we didn't have to watch him eat it.
Yeah, so I think it was just another shot from another place.
Right.
So I don't think it was a continuity error, but like that would be like the closest thing to you noticing something like that.
He gets his chocolate bar and he takes the entire wrapper off, and then he's holding the chocolate, and I'm like, it's gonna melt in your hand and be a mess. That's why you keep it in the wrapper. But I'm noticing stuff. I'm noticing, oh look, they're all automatic transmission, or standard transmissions, and manual windows and manual locks. I'm like, oh god, this is the 70s and 80s, all right. I remember those.
Yeah, where they had the roll up windows and shit and stuff.
Formica and the kitchens and everything, and yeah,
fantastic. And so there was a lot of great stuff in that. Yeah, so great. I mean, that scene where she says she's sick and he comes in, kind of just still won't let her go. Like no matter what. And she even says like you'd be out there for 5 hours if I didn't, And he had tried to say you wouldn't, but she was like, no, you would. No, you would. You'd be out there for 5 hours waiting for me. Then I would call you, and you wouldn't believe that I was sick. You would think I wasn't sick. So that's why I had to come here to tell you this. I'm just like, oh.
I tend to want to go to the gynecologist by myself.
I know. Oh, he wanted to go to the gynecologist. He got all jealous of the doctor. I'm like, dude, just let her go to the gynecologist in peace.
Right.
And then, and he gets mad. He's like, oh, yeah, that doctor that's, blah, blah. Like, he stalked the doctors. And he found out what doctor she went to or something like that. It just got
ridiculous.
It just got really overboard at times. And when the ending happens and he gets the ultimatum, he brings up the ultimatum and she says, he got the closure. It's done. It's over. He even says it was closure to him. He's over. Yeah. He doesn't try to go with somebody else. I still say he should just stay single for a while. And he's running at the end, and it's
But, it's
done.
funny because, his sister, the one that seems normal, but she's now hooking up with Griffin Dunn's character, who seems pretty quirky and weird. You can understand why, because,
that's what she's used to.
That's what she's used to. She has a mom that's weird and a brother that's weird, and,
but, I almost feel like there has to be, like, at least one non-quirky character.
Well, there's two in that family. That's the sister and the stepfather.
Well, he's a little weird, too.
A little, but not much.
Not as much.
He puts up with a lot of weird shit.
He wants to go disco dancing, and then at one point he starts twirling that girl. You were like, you can't do that now. You can't just
spontaneously dance with somebody.
Oh
my God, you're raping me.
Well, not that, but like they'll be like, consent, which is wonderful. Like, I get that. Like, I'm all for consent. I'm just saying, it's
there's one point where he's in the office and he's going by and he's actually like touching his various co-workers as he's leaving, and it doesn't mean anything, but you cannot do that today.
No. That'll get you fired.
Yeah.
The other thing that his boss wants him to like, we didn't talk about the boss.
Yeah, Jerry Harden's character was his son's having some kind of weird sexual issue, and he's like coming to him for advice. Like,
and he says like, play him Janis Joplin, and apparently it worked, but like he caught him on the bad day to tell him like it worked, because he's like, I don't want to hear anything about your son's sexual issues anymore.
Please stop bringing me this shit.
Yeah, it's very inappropriate for the workplace. And he was right, but like the way you said it, you're like, oh God, is he going to get fired for like how he's kind of talking to his boss? But I think even back then, they would have been, they would be like, okay, you could bring this up to HR and get me in some serious trouble for doing this. So I get not.
Maybe back then.
What?
Maybe back then.
You think now it wouldn't be like that?
No, HR doesn't care about employees. It's there to protect management, not employees.
Well, I'm saying like the employee, is getting all this stuff too. The manager is bringing it to the employees, so the employee's going to tell, rat on the manager. That would be HR.
Right.
So the manager's boss.
Right.
It was his boss, so he would have. HR would not have put up with that
back
shit.
Then, yeah. Like I said, these days...
I think even nowadays that still would be a thing.
It's supposed to be a thing. It's not been my experience. So.
I don't know.
It's a different corporate world now.
I don't know. If you do that like Walmart, somebody says, hey, can you help me teach my kids some sexual thing. You bring that up to HR. HR is talking to the boss, and they're gonna have like some kind of big thing about workplace conduct. That's corporate for you.
Yeah, but it's also easier and cheaper to just get rid of the employee and hire somebody else for minimum wage. That's generally how it's done these days.
Well, not at Walmart, because you could get sued for that, and you can have all these issues. So things like that, like those big corporate, they don't want anything that could get out and make the company itself. That's why they don't fire people like that. They hire almost anybody they can. They take, because they don't want bad juju out there about their company.
Well, they have to be more like that now because people aren't working for their shit jobs anymore.
That's true.
Nobody's taking those jobs.
That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, it's a different world right now. It really is.
And so so the character does that and stuff. And that was when he was in a bad mood and even told poor Betty off and everything. You were
poor
like, because you even said to right before he did, like, don't be mean to Betty.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah.
You knew it was coming.
Don't be mean to Betty. Poor little girl. And then he's all nice to her. Like, you're like, apologize to Betty, and he kind of did. He didn't say he was sorry, but he did. He did invite her to dinner and stuff because I don't know what he thought. Like, maybe because he just felt bad, but he definitely wasn't interested in her, or whatever. So he was only interested in Laura, and it goes with that obsession. It's that obsession, So this is a good movie. If you're going through a breakup or you're dating somebody, you might be a little too obsessed. Maybe watch this movie and decide for yourself if you want to.
How not to be.
How not to be obsessed. Just try not to be like that guy, John Hurt.
Good movie though. Great
good movie. Great story. So definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, you just heard us probably tell you the whole thing, but watch it anyway.
It's a good, adult film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a film for adults, not for kids, and that's the great thing that Criterion is doing. Is it does a lot of movies that are for adults, and whatnot, and that's what Paul likes. And they barely ever make these anymore. If they ever do, it's mainly still geared toward kids. Mm-hmm. So Hollywood should. Well, I mean, this wasn't necessarily United Artists, but like.
We need another United Artists.
And once again, it was marketed terribly. So once again shows you that if this had been marketed as Chilly Scenes of Winter, I think it would have been a success.
Right. It may have taken a while. It may have been a cult film, but it would have had more success.
And it said in the thing, like, they were used to theaters, like, being in theaters for a while before it caught on. And so we need stuff like that. But unfortunately, theaters, because theaters are corporate and theaters are big deals, they don't want to keep the movie in the theater for very long. Yeah. They want to put it on digital as quickly as possible.
They don't want to have an audience build.
Yeah. So they don't want to wait till audience catches on. They want to have it already. So they're very impatient.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Mm-hmm. Maybe things will change at some point, but I doubt it. Because, like, things don't really change. They just keep drastically getting worse until something new comes along or whatever. Maybe, and we've even talked, like, it would have been great if we had money to buy our own theater. We would fucking show movies like this, older movies that don't get as much play, plus the newer ones that not many. A24 is about one of the only companies that does movies like this.
That's why I love doing Film Freaks and Criterion Watch, because then I get to talk about movies like this.
Yeah, movies like this, and maybe show filmmakers, indie filmmakers, you can make a movie like this. Mm-hmm. You can, and you don't have to have the budget of like a couple $1 million.
Just gotta pay attention to the writing.
Just pay attention to the writing. Get a really good director, and just get really good actors who are out there that just haven't made it yet. Go to that bar on, whatever, 24th Street or whatever. Go to the...
Probably doesn't exist anymore, but yeah.
Well, go to equivalent. Go to whatever the equivalent of it is in L.A. or New York and or Atlanta. Go find these people.
Wherever there's a lot of theater, that's where you're going to find actors.
And audition, these people, for the right part.
It's like my favorite year when he's like, I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star. Don't go after movie stars, go after actors.
Yeah, they could have. They were talking about they could have put like Robert Redford or Paul Newman in the role, but they put John Hurd, and he was perfect. Robert Redford would have made that movie just too Robert Redford. It would not have felt. It wouldn't have felt real. And even John Hurd almost turned it down because it was too real to what was going on with his life, and that is what makes it wonderful. That is why this movie works. Is because he could feel it. And it was very personal to him, and all of these things, all these people, Gloria Graham, even it was personal for her, and she enjoyed doing it. So there you go. Just
because otherwise they would have cast, Julia Roberts and what's his name from Die Hard, and
Bruce Willis,
and it would have ruined it. It just sucked.
Yeah. Were they big in the 70s? They weren't that big in the 80s.
It's my example. That's what they would have gone with.
Yeah, he was talking about The Player, which is another great fucking Criterion movie that we already did. We already did
Robert
that
Altman,
one. We already did that one. We need to do another Robert Altman at some point. But we did The Player already. So if you can want to check that episode out, it's already out.
It's pretty early, didn't we?
We did that in the second season, yeah. We did that when I was in LA.
There you go.
So just like In a Lonely Place. Wonderful movies that take place in LA. So this movie takes place in New York, and as much as I'm not a big fan of New York, like I don't ever want to live there.
I love New York.
Not now. New York now is just completely different.
I'd still live in New York. If you gave me the choice between LA and New York, I'd take New York every time.
But you like the cold.
And
I
the
love
pizza.
The heat. And you like the New York pizzas. LA pizzas.
I like the attitude. I'm more of a New York person.
Yeah. He's a grouch, and that's kind of what it was. Though the best line in this movie, we both kind of decided, best line in this movie was when Peter Riegert is in his PJs, and his and Charles is like, aren't you gonna go to job hunt? And he was like, I already did it. It's like, in your PJs? He was like, I came and I already went, and I came back and I put my clothes on. If I'm gonna be depressed,
I might as well be comfortable.
Be comfortable, and that was just wonderful.
Yeah,
and I love that.
That's a line to live by.
That is a line. If you're gonna be depressed, you might as well be comfortable. So,
Yep.
So if you get some nice silk PJs, if you want to be depressed,
and a big wig.
Big wig. Well, I just want to thank you all for this first episode of the next season. This is season 4. Can you believe it? We've lasted 4 seasons so far.
Yep.
So we're gonna do more, and there'll be Film Freaks, and there'll be what the F Fridays. There'll be
next Criterion watches me.
Next one is you.
All
right, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Large floppy horse penis.
Is that the name of our movie? The Criterion version?
Nope.
Love to work with Griffin Dunn.
Coke Zero, sponsor us. Sponsor me.